Well, a standoff has erupted as far as the joint transition team is concerned. The elections may be over, but a new battlefront has just opened. There is a statement that has just been released by the incoming government, the John Dramani Mahama side of the transition team. Pretty explosive indeed. We're going to get into that for you. This happening in the last hour as far as the transition team is concerned. And this really is setting the stage for a very controversial next few days into the new year as we approach the swearing in of the new government. And why? It has to do with last-minute payments. And as we know already, the John Mahama side say the government, the incumbent government, should not be making last-minute payments and committing the incoming government to hefty financial bills when indeed they'll be bearing the brand. They should bring it to the joint transition team for consideration. It also includes what they call last-minute recruitment and promotions into the public sector. This is also very contentious indeed. There is a position that's expressed by the Mahama side that there was an agreement at the second meeting of the joint transition team that both the last-minute payments as well as the last-minute recruitment and promotions will all now be subject to a decision by the joint transition team, where the government team members are and the income administration team members are also. We are learning tonight from a statement that has just been issued by the NDC side of the joint transition team. Very strong words used indeed. And if you are any of the individuals benefiting from these alleged last-minute recruitments and payment, this is the position of the incoming government. That all those payments, the last-minute payments, the recruitments, the transfers and promotions currently happening. And we need to get into what these are precisely. What are these last-minute payments? What are these transfers? What are these recruitments and promotions? But if you benefit from any of that, the incoming government say categorically tonight in the statement that they will reverse any of these last-minute activities, including the payments, the recruitments, the promotions. They will reverse. And they also are that in some circumstances, they will actually also hold public officers who are responsible for these last-minute activities, including the payments, to strict accountability. That could also mean potential, as we know in our recent history, potential of being charged, causing financial loss to the state, etc. So this is really getting very serious. And they've met twice, I believe, and already the bad blood is there, the battle lines have been drawn. You wonder whether the transition process is already dead before it could even begin. But there is a law that governs this process. We'll get into that, what this law says and what it means for both sides going into the transition and to the handover of power to the income administration. So that is where we are tonight. And this is developing in the last few minutes. In the last hour or so, this statement had come in that the incoming government will reverse any last-minute payments that are coming. But there are a few additional things that we've seen that the incumbent government side have also referred to as far as what they call the precedent is concerned. And this, I pull this up because it's been referenced by the incumbent government, that while the outgoing government at the time, John Dramani Mahama in 2016, also made some last-minute appointments. They point to this as a recruitment, and this was on a January 3rd, Daniel Demelevo was appointed, remember, under very controversial circumstances, just a few days before John Dramani Mahama exited power. And this has been referenced. There's a fundamental context over this, which is that incumbent government still has state authority to act. And the school of thought says, well, between now and January 7, they can do anything they want to within the context of the power and the powers of the president. He can appoint, just like happened with Daniel Demelevo, with John Dramani Mahama. So if there are recruitments to be done and the state is empowered to do so, they will go ahead. That's a position that has been expressed. If there are payments that must be done, they will go ahead. Recruitment, transfers will all happen because state authority is still residing with the current government, right? And that is why I'm now hearing, yes, you can proceed, but the incoming government has said notice tonight in that statement that if you do so, we shall reverse them. So very interesting days ahead. We'll get to some understanding about what this means and how to resolve this impasse, this standoff, pretty quickly. Now, this is a spillover effect, by the way. There's a spillover effect. And this is also affecting parliamentary business. Remember, Parliament itself has been mild in some controversy over the period. They have not sat for a long time. They just returned for the first time yesterday after the elections, and already the transition arguments and the tensions there is affecting work in Parliament. A few things there. 350 million tax waivers, that has been controversial for more than 2 years already. That is now subject to the controversy, stalled already, because the minority side say this constitutes significant payments that we told you you cannot do, or wait for the incoming government to take full control and then they can reevaluate these. And so the minority side say they won't do business as far as the 350 million tax waiver is concerned. And then you also have, and this for me is the biggest one really, this 68 billion that the government will need to pay worker salaries from January to March. The budget for 2025 needs to be read. It hasn't been read, partly because in November, when it was scheduled to be read, that is when the confusion erupted over the vacated seats controversy. And so Parliament could not sit. So the budget was not ready. It went into an election. Normally, this should have been done by now. Without that, they cannot appropriate the 68 million they need to pay worker salaries between January and March. But that must be done now before Parliament goes on recess, because when it returns, the life of this Parliament would have expired. Whoever takes over next year will find a situation where workers will have to go at least 3 months without pay, unless this is passed by this Parliament. Now, what is happening now is, because the NDC side in Parliament say, well, we're not going to do business over the 350 million tax waivers. They're also not going to do business over the 140 million euros that had been budgeted for, that the defense minister or ministry wants to use to purchase ships for the Ghana Navy. The NDC side said they won't do business over that because we cannot really ascertain whether the due diligence has been done and it's in the public interest to spend this amount of money at a time when the economy is struggling. Because they're not willing to do business over these, the incumbent government also says, so if that's the case, then we shouldn't do any business. And that will include the 68 billion that the government requires next year to pay worker salary. So the worker salary has become, workers are now being used as pawns in this chess game, in this conflict, political conflict between the NDC and the NPP side. And there's a high likelihood now that in next year in January, worker salaries will stall. They'll go without pay for 3 months. That's not all. The entire government machinery will grind to a halt because you need this 68 billion to run the government machinery in 2025. So that is where we are. So there are implications of this. And it's all about the transition, what the government can do and what the government cannot do, and what they should do or what they should not do as far as major commitments are concerned. The NDC side also referenced what happened, and that the NPP too in 2016 also made the same demands at the time of the John Mahama administration, that you don't spend, come to the joint transition team and leave us to evaluate this afresh when we take over. So we've seen that, except that now workers are in the middle of this and they may possibly bear the brunt of this in 2025. We are talking about some 688,000 workers who may be affected as a result of this next year if nothing happens. Salaries will be affected. Government's machinery will be hit pretty hard next year if this is not dealt with. So there are real consequences for this. We're going to sit down and have a conversation about it, see if we can get some clarity on specifically what are these last-minute payments, what are these recruitments. It is obvious from the statement that we've seen today that the NDC side may have come into some information. They've been told something at the transition committee level about some recruitment that they object to. We don't know about. We'll learn about that. But most importantly, how do you resolve this? Because now it's getting fundamentally very serious with real implications for worker salary and for the administration of this country in January to March. My guest is sitting for a conversation right after this. Stay with me. And thank you very much for staying with us here on PM Express. There's a lot happening, of course, in the last few days on the back of the elections and its outcome. one of which we're discussing tonight, focusing on the transition, which is proving to be a very, very controversial one indeed. And then, of course, in the last couple of hours, it has emerged that the petition has now been submitted to the President of the Republic for the removal of the Chief Justice. And I have a copy of this petition. I'll read it very quickly because that in itself, it's very substantive indeed. And we have been this way before as far as the EC chairperson is concerned. And this now is before the president. The question is, what will the president do with it? The constitutional provisions are pretty clear. And the individual behind this has been on the PM Express before, Professor Stephen Kweku-Asare. You know him, Professor Azar, who indeed has penned this petition. Very elaborate indeed, and one of the fundamental bases for this petition to the president is that very controversial decision that we discussed here on PM Express. In fact, the Ghana Bar Association criticized the Chief Justice for the decision to initiate the appointment of some justices to the Supreme Court, which was, according to the GB at the time, unusual. The Chief Justice doesn't do that because she herself was in conflict because she's a member of the Judicial Council that, in essence, would have been part of the process of the appointment of the justice. And then she herself, one person, does the recommendations when she knows that that process doesn't specify that she does it alone. In fact, the president of the Ghana Bar Association is a member of the Judicial Council and didn't know about it until the story broke. So that is a fundamental developing story that we are learning about, and I'm going to go through the specifics for you before we get to the substantive matter we are discussing today. But PMX, which is always brought to you by Syntax Tank, to the strong and the tough, Academic Times newspaper, and the Pepsodent Cavity Fighter. Academic Times, as you know, is the incoming graphic online publication aiming to collaborate with university authorities and students to ensure that student research is published in summary form. And the Syntax Tank, as you know, is Christmas. Have you thought of an ideal Christmas present just yet? Make Syntax Tanks the perfect Christmas present. In our homes, this Christmas, gift a Syntax Tank to your family to give your family access to clean water. It's just for Christmas. It's for a lifetime. No matter where you are in the country, just call 0244-335-168 and we will make it happen. Don't make it rice. Don't make it oil. Make it Syntax Tanks. Syntax Tanks are strong, are tight. Life is indeed water. Water is indeed life. Is really what I wanted to say. And so if you're going to be any gift, you want to give the gift of life. Now, every time we eat food and sugars, they're trapped in between our teeth, and that obviously poses a threat to our teeth, to decay, gum, disease, etc. In some cases, foul breath. If you want to deal with that tonight, you really want to get yourself the Pepsodent Cavity Fighter. Well, my guest joining me for a conversation tonight, as far as the transition conversation is concerned, Felix Kwachi-Fosu is a spokesperson of the Mahama transition team. Also joining me tonight for a conversation is Fatima Abubakar, the spokesperson of the government transition team and information minister. And Professor Bafo Ejimendria is a former UN senior governance advisor, also joining me for a conversation on the transition team here on PMX. And I've just been talking to you about the petition that has been sent to the president now by Professor Kweku-Asare, asking the president to indeed trigger the process, the constitutional process for the removal of the Chief Justice. We'll see, and in due course, get into the details and specifics of this. But let me get to another developing story now, and a story that we also has been breaking the last couple of hours, and it's based on a statement that was issued by the John Mahama transition team, and Felix Kwachi-Fosu is on the line. He penned that particular statement, and it's clear in there that the payments that are currently happening, the recruitments that they say is happening, last-minute transfers, all of that will be reversed if it's not subjected to the joint transition team's consideration. Felix, thanks for your time here on PMX. Can you explain the basis for this position articulated in this statement that was issued a couple of hours back?
Well, Evan, thank you. Since day one of the transition process, since the very first day the joint transition team met, we have remonstrated with the government over widespread reports of rushed recruitments, very significant payments, promotions, transfers, and other such activities. We have expressed deep concern about the impact of these activities on government's fiscal position, barely 3 weeks to the exit of the government. We have also said that, bearing in mind that there's already precedents from the past, where the current government, when it was preparing to take over, insisted that such activities in all departments and agencies and ministries should be carried out with the express consent of the incoming government. We express concern that this principle, this position is not being adhered to. On the first day of the transition team meeting, the current transition team meeting, when this was raised, a date was fixed, which was last Friday, to address the matter comprehensively. In addition to that, in fact, it was the Attorney General who in the meeting proposed, and this was accepted, that a committee, specifically the Government Machinery Committee, be made to take charge of this matter with a view to addressing the concerns that we have raised. On the second day, the matter was raised again, and we walked away from the meeting with the impression that the concerns we had raised were going to be addressed, and that these appointments, these recruitments, these significant payments being done on our blind side were going to be tabled for consideration, at least at the level of the co-chairpersons, so that we can have insight into what exactly is happening. Because even it is the incoming government, in other words, the John Mahama administration, which in barely 3 weeks will be taken over, that will bear the brunt of these recruitments. All the payments that would arise out of these recruitments in terms of salaries and other conditions of service would be borne by that government. Now, it does not make sense to me to saddle an incoming government with such financial responsibility when these actions do not necessarily align with the priorities of this government. There's a reason why even the interim 3-month budget that is prepared until March, when the government is able to present its fair budget statement, only deals with statutory payments and other emergencies. They don't allow for discretionary expenditure, because those who came up with the idea were fully aware that the incoming government's program must be accommodated in any budget that is prepared. So we have raised this point. There's also a matter of public record, where when the MPP government took over in 2017, they reversed some of the decisions that had been made because they thought that they were not involved in the making of those decisions. As this transition process has gone on, there are many things that we have not had access to. It is public-spirited individuals who have volunteered information to us. We have probed further only to find that even the payments that we are talking about have been grossly underestimated. For instance, you heard me speak about some payments in ECG to a vendor that is supposed to have done some work on some application for them. We had thought that that payment was yet to be made, only to find out that in fact they made the payment on the 2nd of December, where there's an amount of over 170 million Ghana cedis. There's another payment lined up worth about 259 million Ghana cedis that is going to be paid. Now, it is only fair that when there is a transition team that has been given handing over notes, and the handing over notes are supposed to contain information regarding the activities of all ministries, departments, and agencies. These payments, these recruitments, if they were legitimate and genuine, would have been captured in these handing over notes. They would at least let us know where they are posting to, and then we'll relinquish that to the incoming government to continue. If indeed somebody is due some payment and it is legitimate, due process has been undertaken, why would there be a fear that the incoming government would not pay? Why the rush? This government has had 8 years to do all these recruitments and engage in any activity that it wants. Why does it wait to 3 weeks to the expiration of their mandate to carry out these activities?
You've also talked about recruitments. What specifically are you referring to when you say the last minute?
We have heard that hundreds of recruitments are going. As I speak, the Ministry of Interior is supposed to be undertaking the recruitment of hundreds, if not thousands, of people into the security agencies. Now, we find out at the transition team meeting that at the beginning of this year, during the budgetary process, Parliament actually approved the budget with a specific ceiling for the number of people that the Ministry of Interior can recruit. We are finding out that they have exceeded that number. In some instances, we have heard or learned that due process has been circumvented because of the indecent haste to rope in these when there is legitimate suspicion that these are essentially MPP foot soldiers or supporters who they are trying to rope in quickly before they leave. Because in some instances, we have learned that basic processes, like allowing the individual's consent to send in applications, vetting the applications, carrying out interviews, asking them to do medicals before they are given appointment letters, have not been done. And yet they've been issued with appointment letters. In some cases, the appointment letters have been backdated to create the impression that this was done long before the election. Now, we don't find these as wholesome. And we think that it is a deviation from the very principle that the MPP espoused in 2017. So we have taken a strong position. We had hoped that the process of the transition would have allowed a platform to amicably address this so that we reach consensus, we seek common ground as parties. But it appears that our entreaties are being ignored.
Yeah, on that on that subject, you've made the point that at the second meeting of the Joint Transition Team, you tabled the concerns again, and you walked away with the impression that they were going to be dealt with. In your first statement on the subject, you pointed to a certain agreement on this, that all these last-minute payments and recruitment will now be brought to the Joint Transition Team for consideration. There wasn't an agreement, was there?
We indicated that because of how government was behaving, we were going to actually reverse all of these activities. Whereupon the co-chair, the current chief of staff, Madame Firma Osepari, then said that, okay, we should table these concerns for resolution. But they would not wait. Even as she made these statements, the recruitment was still ongoing. So at this stage, we are unable to place much confidence in the words that are preached at the transition team meeting. And we believe that taking a firm position, as we have done, is the only remedy to what we believe are irregular recruitments that are taking place. I think that those in authority must appreciate that they have to do things properly. That when you are leaving office, you don't adopt a scorched earth policy, where basically you destroy everything in your path in the hope that it will frustrate the incoming administration. We are going to have to prepare a budget to accommodate the salaries of all these people that they are employing. As we speak, there's supposed to be some engagement between the NDC finance team and the MPP finance team. All these payments must be tabled so that we know the exact state of the Ghanaian economy. We know what the assets are and what the liabilities are. But there's such a mad rush to make these payments, and these are huge payments. We are not talking statutory payments in terms of salary or emoluments of public officials, or some things that we are bound to pay because there are binding agreements in place, like debt servicing or whatever. We are talking about discretionary payments. Some of the payments themselves are questionable. Some concern payments about application. Even when you look at the amounts involved, what sort of application can cost us 170 to 1 million Ghana cedis, for instance? These are matters that must be looked into.
Stay with me,
and yet there's a rush to pay.
Let me bring you your counterpart from the incumbent government on the Joint Transition Team, is Information Minister Fati. Fati, thanks for your time here on PM Express. What is your clarity on the subject? We've seen the transition team on the side of the incoming government and the statement they've issued tonight saying they'll reverse these payments. At the Joint Transition Team, what happened? Did your side agree to consider these last-minute payments, that all of them should be brought for consideration before, indeed, if any payments must be made, they are made? Hello, Fati.
Hello, Evans.
Great.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes. And thanks for joining.
Thank you so much for having me. Let me say good evening to you and to my co-panelists and your cherished viewers. Just as you asked, let me set a few issues out so that we know exactly what we are dealing with. Because when my My brother, Honorable Fosukwachi, was speaking. He's talking about under the impression, we are under suspicion, we are under this impression. We left thinking that no. But there can be alternative point of views, but there is only one fact. And the fact is that, one, the work of the transition team does not put an embargo on government business. It does not oust the authority of the legitimate government that is expected to work until 6th January 2025, and it does not replace the mandate of the president. It does not replace the mandate of the finance minister to spend or the mandate of the controller to pay. The second issue that I would also like to put out there for the record is that there was no agreement to halt recruitment or payment. Even when we talk about agreement, we are talking about meeting of the minds. We are talking about one person proposing, another person agreeing to accepting the proposal on record. And I'm saying, take it from me, from the meetings that the transition team has held to all the communications that we have put out, if there is any statement purporting to show that there was an agreement that payment and recruitment must stop immediately, that is absolutely false. Let me also remind you that both my brother and myself were not originally members of the transition team. If he managed to enter the auditorium ahead of the first meeting on Wednesday, probably it was a prerogative or a discretion exercised by their side of the team to let him go and sit in as a non-member. But it was only at the first meeting of the transition team on Wednesday that the distinguished co-chairs, Honorable Julius Debra and Honorable Fremose Opare, announced that both of us are being appointed as spokespersons for each side. That being said, I know for the record that after that meeting, when I was called, the first meeting I was mandated to allow sitting was the second meeting held on Friday, last Friday. Now, when we went for the meeting, the incoming government side made proposals about, they raised concerns about payments, last minute, what they term as last minute payments in quotes and last minute recruitment in quotes. Our side believed that there was nothing like last minute payment or last minute recruitment. Why were we saying that? We are saying that the NDC side has been part of a parliament which has approved the 2024 budget. They have been part of the parliament which has also approved the mid-year budget as presented by the Honorable Minister for Finance during the mid-year budget review. Government expenditure, based on our expectations of revenue mobilization, financing, and also grants, and wherever we're going to get the resources from, including recognition for the IMF PCPED program, which is currently ongoing in our financial space. Every expenditure, every decision takes into consideration what the country representative and his team from IMF will look at to make sure there is adherence. It goes to the board. They look at it, make sure there is compliance with our indicative targets and what we are required to meet substantially before we can roll out some of these activities. Fourthly, I am stating for the record that since the election of 7 December 2024, not a single new warrant has been issued by the Ministry of Finance for any NDA to recruit.
So all the payments all the payments you're making are all in the budget, budgeted for in the 2024 budget.
Exactly. That's what I'm coming to. If you will allow me, I am saying that when they are talking last minute, we will come to the convention and we will come to the history. But what I am saying is that since 7th December that we went to the polls, voted, the NDC won overwhelmingly, for which I congratulate the president-elect and his team and wish them all the best for the work that lies ahead. not a single new warrant has issued to any MDA to recruit. The Interior Ministry and the Health Ministry had already put public communication out from the Health Ministry informing nursing students who completed up to the 2022 batch to go on the portal to fill out and then commence the recruitment process. The Ghana Police Service, some months ago, issued a statement setting out that they had accepted applications based on parliamentary approval and the commencement received by the Ministry of Interior, and subsequently had selected venues in all 16 regions for all applicants to go for the physical selection.
How many people did the budget give you that opportunity to recruit?
I am saying that those issues are already matters of public record. You can take the police services statement.
The allegation is that you exceeded that ceiling that you were given, that you originally communicated.
And even my position as a lawyer and a spokesperson for the outgoing government's transition team is that if there is an illegality, it does not matter when that illegality occurred, whether it is in 2017, 2018, 2019, 2023, or 2024. When the incoming government is sworn in on 7 January 2025, they would have the authority, legitimacy, the goodwill of the people, and the resources to investigate those issues, and if they seek to prosecute, proceed to do that. But to the best of my knowledge,
in the statement that they've issued tonight, they've actually said that all those, what they call last-minute payments and recruitment, they will reverse it once they take over office.
And I am saying that they are basing that statement on a supposed agreement that does not exist. A supposed agreement that does not exist, that never took place, which is a misinformation and false statement that they have put in circulation for whatever reason, I don't know. Because this evening when my brother was speaking, he was now saying, you asked him, was there an agreement? And I believe he is learned, he knows what an agreement is about. And he knows there was no agreement. That is why he said they left under the impression that you cannot be under the impression. This is a meeting of record, it's a meeting convened under the guidance of a statutory provision, and it is not like an informal walkthrough kind of arrangement.
That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter,
when they get the mandate.
That doesn't matter.
When they get the mandate on 7 January.
Yes.
And there is any such illegality, as I wrote in the press statement that we have put out there. Of course, we will all support them to take the necessary action for
but now that you know, now that you've heard,
to the best of our knowledge, we haven't done that.
Now that you've heard their position, I'll come to the final point. But now that you've heard their position, that all the payments you're making and the recruitments that may be happening under the Interior Ministry will be reversed once they take up. Does it change your approach?
Evans, whatever action they seek to take lies with them, but that does not affect or change our approach. Government business will continue. And I was very concerned when my brother mentioned that it's as if we mean to destroy everything in our path before we leave office, and made references to recruitment. And I was surprised. Is he saying that in 2016, when the former president increased national service allowance up to over 60%, it was intended to clear everything in his path? When mining agreements were signed as late as 28 December 2016, was it meant to clear everything in his path? When they did appointment at NCCE, the SRAJ, the Controller and Accountant General, Auditor General Department, was it meant to clear his path? When they had recruited and sent people to the military training school in November of 2016, who were left in school until our government commissioned them as military men, was it meant to overburden the next government? I believe at this point, the beautiful thing that has happened to our country, peaceful election, the goodwill of the co-chairs of the transition team, and also particularly, let's single out the two representatives of the president and the president-elect. I was in so much admiration, sitting in the team and looking at how fair and how graceful they went about the business of the day, I was proud as a Ghanaian, and I thought we were proceeding on that tangent. And I'm saying all these point to the fact that governance is a continuous process. But after an election has won and a mandate is going to be handed over to you, if you think there is any illegality, we are not saying look into what happened within the period only. Whatever you think happened within the past 8 years you think is illegal, if you so desire to look into it, do so. But I don't know where this issue about all of a sudden throwing false statements out, because even the information that they put out that there was an agreement for to halt payment and recruitment, for which they have issued a second statement to reiterate that position, is absolutely false.
So stay with me,
There is no bad faith as well as putting out false statement when we sat in a beautiful meeting and everybody was very cordial and spoke well and we meant well and we wanted to build our country and move on.
Stay with me, Fatih. I still have with me Felix. He makes a point about the substantive matter of the payments. She says your members of parliament and theirs approve the budget. They haven't issued any new warrants, and all the payments being made are budgeted for and legitimate payments already cleared and approved that they have to do because they're still government and they have the authority of the state to do so. Recruitment, he says, they've clarified that it is a recruitment that we heard about. In fact, there was a fight over this 11,000 alleged recruitment into the service at the time, I remember, 3 months ago. And that is what was clarified, and that is what is happening. No new recruitment. Well, what do you say to that? Hello, Felix. Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Yes. Fatih admits that she was not in the first meeting. I was. I have been there since the very beginning. 2 commitments were made on Wednesday after the transition team of the president-elect raised concern. In fact, the basis of that concern was the very letter that Mr. Osafo authored in December 2016, demanding the very things we are demanding today. 2 commitments were made in the wake of the reading of that letter. The first was that the matter be shelved and determined on Friday. And 2, that on Friday, it will be referred to a subcommittee, specifically the government machinery subcommittee, to look at and review this with a view to address it. On Friday, when the responses we were getting were not satisfactory, we put it to the co-chairman there that we were going to do what I have indicated in the statement I issued this evening, that we will reverse it. It was at that point that the Chief of Staff, Honorable Firma Osefari, indicated then that we didn't need to take that step and that we should table these concerns for resolution and that the payments will be held on to, the recruitment will be held on to. Evans, as I speak to you, the president of the country, the president-elect, gets daily security briefings. So if something as sensitive as national security is opened up for the scrutiny of the incoming president, why does this government find it so difficult letting us know exactly what recruitments are being done? Second, it is true that in the immediate aftermath of an election,
But she's denied that there are any recruitments. But she denied that there are any recruitments beyond what is already been budgeted for.
But that is not true. She knows that is not true. She knows that organizations like GRA, like Bank of Ghana, and the others are recruiting as we speak. In some cases, there have been reports that letters are being backdated. So the best way to get to the bottom of these matters is to let all those agencies who will be appearing before the transit team anyway report on the status of the activities, including these recruitments. That is what we have asked for.
But you have evidence about these alleged recruitments?
Absolutely. There are so many of them that we can recount. At the appropriate time, we will put them out.
But what about putting it before the joint committee?
Again, in terms of the payments, I have told you about 2 payments, which are incontrovertible. They are not deniable. And there are many of such payments that are going on.
But it says those are budgeted for. In respect
of the military, the security agencies recruitment.
Yeah, okay.
The position of the current finance minister was that they got financial clearance some time ago. The current majority leader, Honorable Kesela Forson, put it to him that the budget that was approved gave specific ceilings and that they had exceeded. The finance minister response was that, oh, they can look at the numbers later. So they were unable to categorically deny the positions that we had taken on the matter and the information that we had put across. In any event, if FATI denies that these things are happening, why are they then unable to summon the heads of these organizations to come before the government machinery subcommittee, which is responsible for taking over the reins of government in respect of ministries, departments, and agencies, to report on their activities? Some CEOs have made contacts and sought to explain the payments that they are making. It confirms the very fact that we are raising. So the idea that she can issue a statement to rubbish what happens will not fly. The other point, Evans, is that whilst it is true that the holding of an election and its outcome does not take away the mandate of the sitting government until it stands over, governments, from the very day they take over, have a responsibility to act within reasonable limits. So when you have weeks to leave power, there are certain things that you simply should not do. One of them is that you don't burden an incoming administration with expenditure that you have not conferred with them over.
Even if that expenditure has been approved by Parliament.
But what expenditure has been? I have told you what was approved and how they have exceeded the limits. In the cases of the other agencies we are talking about, there is no such improvement. What they talk about is financial clearance. But financial clearance is not the same as payment. The payment will be done as and when those people have worked. From the look of things, even if those people were given appointment letters today, they will be drawing salaries in January, by which time a new government would have taken over. So the responsibility to pay them will fall on the new government. The new government has its priorities, as contained in its manifesto, as will be contained in this fair budget statement to be read in March. It is only fair and proper, as the MPP demanded. Why are they running away from the very position they canvassed in 2016, warranting the writing of a terse letter to the then Chief of Staff, Honorable Julius Zebra? If the MPP thought that because governments have mandates until they leave power, they can do whatever they want, why did they write demanding that we hold on to these appointments and insisted that whatever we do will be done with the express consent of the incoming government? Why did they reverse, in some cases, the recruitment of nurses that had long been advertised before we left power? So they are counterfeiting positions that are entirely different from what they did, and that is the difficulty that we have with them.
Okay, stay with me, Felix. I want to bring in Professor Bafo Ejimendria into the conversation. Prof, so we're back here again. This matter is, again, dividing opinion. Well, where do you stand on how do you resolve this? Do we have to amend the law to write this into the act, the Transition Act, that governs the process in black and white, specifying what the outgoing government can and cannot do?
Well, thank you, Evans. You know, I'm a little bit taken aback by this seeming conflict between the two sides of the team, the transition team. First of all, the individuals who constitute this transition team are very honorable, very experienced individuals in governance in this country. In fact, most of them have been part of previous transition teams, and they've been part of government. So this shouldn't have created this kind of standoff that we are witnessing. And I believe that very soon they will put themselves together and work on behalf of the nation. Secondly, you know, if there are these differences, I think they have their own forum. And bringing this to the public attention to create the impression that the team is in discord and they are not, they are fighting over this kind of thing, it's also not, the optics are not very good for us. We have had a very good elections, and I wish that my honorable members of the transition team will find a way to resolve these differences before the public gets this strong impression that there's no cohesion in the team. That's my first point. Second point is that, you know, first of all, the whole idea of the transition team, as we know, is to ensure a smooth transition from the outgoing government to the incoming government. And of course, the incoming government must know everything that the state, in the hands of the NPP, has accomplished in terms of our serious issues of finances, security, and other kinds of things. I think the sore point here, as I listen to my two friends, is this attempt normally by outgoing governments, and we have seen this By the way, this is about the fourth transition that we have witnessed, from Rawlings to Kufuor to Mills, and then from Mahama to 2016 to Akufo-Addo's government. There are always these issues because outgoing governments are tempted oftentimes to make certain decisions that could create problems for the incoming governments. That's why back in 2016, the outgoing government was questioned by the incoming government.
You think what is playing out now is one of those that this outgoing government wants to create problems for the John Mahama incoming administration?
I don't think the idea is to create problems, but it's perceived by incoming government normally as a problem. You see, because we all agree that government function does not cease after elections. And even during the transition period, the government in power still has a responsibility to ensure the governance process. So, but I think that the concern here has been if the government in power takes decisions, last-minute decisions that have serious implications for the incoming government, that becomes a concern for the incoming government. Mind you, we are not a rich country. We are not like America or Britain or wherever. And we also know that our economy is in dire straits, okay? So the fear of the incoming government is that if you take certain steps that will complicate the management of the economy, that for them is a no-no. And I think that's what I sense. But my hope is that the two sides will find a way to resolve these things internally. That's why it's a team. Sit down, talk about, find a way to resolve it so that we don't create this wrong impression as if after our successful elections, there is still tension between the two sides in this matter. So I'm just hoping that they will find a way to resolve.
And I want to bring in Fatih into the conversation. Fatih, and this point has been made, and Prof also cites it. I mean, Felix also makes a point about the precedent that was set in 2015, just before 2016, just before 2017, by the time your side, with Osafo Mafo's letter making these same demands that the incoming administration for John Mahama is making right now. That at the time you also said, do not make these payments and give us some visibility into these and let's make the decisions together. What has changed now? Isn't that a fair thing to do considering you made those same demands in 2016?
Evans, thank you. That's a very good question, but I think that question should have gone to Felix because he was a spokesperson for the then transition team. And his position, if there are any principles, his position on record was that government business had to continue. So in fact, when he was appointed again as spokesperson for this team, I thought he would agree with us that the principles he held in 2016 still apply today. But what I am saying on my part is that he is quick to refer to a letter that was written by Honorable Osafo Mafo on 17 December 2016. But the actions of the outgoing government, even after receiving that letter from Honorable Osafo Mafo, showed that that letter was only advisory and they were not bound by it because they threw it away and went ahead to do their recruitment, went ahead to do business as usual because even payment, I remember at the Environment Ministry, they had some huge payment in euros for some waste management contracts. And Honorable Mama Ayarga said his mandate has not expired, and it was only going to expire on the eve of 7 January 2017. So I thought that maybe with the benefit of the experience and opportunity and insight, my brother would have shared the same position with me. But what is of concern to me as a person is that I have been very disappointed at how my brother leading the NDC side has quickly run to the media and social media to perpetrate this narrative about last-minute recruitment and last-minute payment when the composition of the transition team and the way they've conducted business in the room gave me another impression that we were working together and any information that the incoming government side had requested in camera, the outgoing government side was willing to provide, that even handing over notes had already were directed to be submitted to the subcommittee co-chairs by close of last Friday. So this issue about running to the media, I don't know whether it's a sympathy strategy or there is even a bigger agenda that lies ahead. I do not know. And I don't want to read malice.
Is there any plan on your side how to resolve this?
The point I'm trying to make is that these are issues that we said, if you see any illegality, bring it before the committee. I don't think any part of the committee has said that they are refusing to listen to any issues concerning any illegality, for which reason they should quickly run to the media. Because if they run to the media and embark on this media campaign, we will be forced to come out to respond. But over the period, you will know that I've been reluctant to even grant interviews on this out of respect for the co-chairs and members of the transition team and the business that is being conducted.
Give me a quick word. Give me a quick word. Give me a quick word on this.
They would have sent cameras in.
Give me a quick word on this before I get Felix to wrap up, which is we need to make progress. So from your side, as far as the joint transition team is concerned, how are you willing to proceed? Because obviously they have concerns on this. The transition must still proceed. What's your thinking around your team as to how this should be resolved?
Absolutely. We want to proceed, and we want to do that cordially. So our position is that if you identify any illegality, bring it before the committee at the next meeting. Let us address it. Unless it is some political or populist conversation that does not bother on illegality. Because I've not even heard them say illegality. Because if you see something that has that an institution, you claim an institution has circumvented due process, and you have evidence to that, and you know specific instances for which you can submit evidence for the team to work on, I don't think we should end up in the media talking about we are suspecting, we are of suspicion, it is we are convinced, or we are under the impression. No. I think the onus and the leadership that the people of Ghana have given us to ensure that this process is smooth. I'm begging that my brother and I, it goes for both of us, not just him. We should follow the cue of the quality of business and how graceful the joint committee or transition team has gone about business. And let us confirm more. I think if we were talking more and without malice, if we meant to do business together, this shouldn't be a difficult problem that will inflame and resolve the whole network as to how
let me quickly bring in Felix. Fatih makes a fundamental point about double standards. At the time that you were the spokesperson, again, for your side of the transition when you're in government, when they put in that request, you made the point that your authority, the state authority, is still with you, your government. Your authority hasn't been set aside because there's a transition team in place, and you cannot now reverse that position and keep the principles as expressed then. And then he makes the point, and he also addressed for me very quickly. How do you plan to resolve this going forward? Yeah.
Evans, nobody has said that the authority of the present government has been diminished simply because they have lost elections. We have simply said that open up the books, open up the processes. What you are doing, let us know. Number two, there is nothing we have said publicly that we have not said the meetings of the joint transition team. In fact, the very first time this issue came up was on Wednesday. It was raised by the Mahama side of the transition team. It was because we didn't get adequate responses that we were compelled to put out the statement in order to notify the public of what actions we would take to remedy what we believe are irregular recruitments and payments. We have provided sufficient evidence, but what has been lacking is a commitment on the part of this government to even create the platform for a resolution of the matters. What I expect them to have done was to, first of all, indicate categorically which recruitments are happening where and what the justification is, and provide whatever justification there is to us as a response to the queries. But they have not done that. They have merely sought to brush aside every concern we raise. And they say that we should not engage the Ghanaian public at whose behest we seek to govern in any event. I don't think that's proper or it is fair. So we are clear in our mind that to the extent that our concerns are not receiving satisfactory resolution or answers, we will take the step we have indicated in our statement as a safeguard, as a bulwark against any adverse impact that it will have on our fiscal position when we took over power on 7 January.
Felix,
I think this is straightforward.
Yeah, Felix, thank you very much. Fatih, I'm grateful. And Prof, I'm grateful that you stayed patiently whilst we sort of understood what the issues are. Always a pleasure talking to you, Prof. Enjoy the rest of your evening.